Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new session with Rights and Responsibilities Awareness Initiative. Today, we do have Kelly Wang and Laura Harper to talk to us about a very important topic, the high school experience in Ontario. Thank you very much, Kelly and Laura, for being here today with us.
Thank you so much for the warm introduction, Haitham. And hello, everyone. My name is Kelly, and I'm here with my friend Laura. We are so excited to be here tonight to talk to you about the high school or secondary school experience in Ontario. This is a topic that's near and dear to our hearts, partially because Laura and I actually met in high school and we've been best friends since. This is such an important part of every child and parent's life. And that's why we wanted to give this presentation to give parents an overview of what your child's high school experience in Ontario will be like.
Alrighty. So who are we and what kind of essay qualifies us to educate you on this matter? So my name is Laura Harper. I am a graphic designer with ISED Canada, and I attended Central Secondary School in London, Ontario.
And hello, everyone. I'm Kelly Wang. And just like Laura, I also attended London Central Secondary School in London, Ontario. That's where we met. But I ultimately graduated from HBBL Secondary School, also in London. Since then, I am now a journalist at 90 CFPL Global News Radio, a research assistant at the Steam 3D Maker Lab, and also a board member with a few local organizations. I'm also currently a Master of Education student at Ontario Tech University.
Alrighty, so just a quick summary of what we will be talking about this evening. We'll be going over the mandatory courses, kind of life at school, the recreational activities that your student might encounter, resources and support, some difficult topics that your student might learn, some major assessments that they're going to take, some requirements for graduation, and finally, how they will prep for post-secondary. Alrighty, so first thing we should go over is some courses. And to talk about courses, we need to define some terminology. So, first of all, a prerequisite is a course that you must take in order to take another course. For example, in order to take French 2, you might need to take French 1 in grade 9. This is because this information will stack on each other and build as your child progresses. Next, an anti-requisite is two courses that have a lot of overlap in their material. They're considered anti-requisite, and the student would be advised to only take one of the two because there is so much overlap. So, for example, a psychology and sociology course might have a lot of this similar material. And finally, a co-requisite is a course that must be taken at the same time as another course. So, for example, I took music and I had to be part of the orchestra, and it was also like a half credit. So, essentially, that would be a co-requisite where I had to take that course because I'm already in this one course. And that, yes. Alrighty, so mandatory courses that your student must be taken in order to graduate. Um, there's 18 compulsory credits to get their Ontario Secondary School diploma, with each grade earning up to 8 credits while also being able to take credits in the summer. And summer school credits are really good if your student may be struggling in certain areas and may want to focus solely on one thing at a time. So the credits that you have to take in order to graduate, you need to have 4 credits in English, one taken per grade. You have to have 3 credits in mathematics. So you're going to take a general math course in grade 9 and 10, and then another math course either in grade 11 or 12. And then in upper year courses, these math courses are broken down into like 3 main courses, which is data management, higher functions, and calculus. And so in that regard, you will get to choose which of those that you will want to do. Similar with science, there are 2 credits that you have to take in science in grade 9 and 10. And after grade 10, it splits into 3 different science credits, which is biology, chemistry, and physics, which are not required. But if you, for example, wanted to go to post-secondary in, say, like a science field, then you might want to consider that. Next, you have to take 1 credit in Canadian history, usually taken in grade 10. 1 credit in Canadian geography taken in grade 9. You also must take 1 credit in the arts, and the arts could mean a lot of different things. I know that at Central, it was either like music, drama, or visual arts. as well. And then you also have to take 1 credit in health and physical education, usually in grade 9. And then in grade 10, you also have to take 2 half credits in career studies and civics and citizenship. So usually what happens is for the first half of the semester, you'll take one of them, so say civics, and then the next half in that same time spot, you might take careers. Alrighty, and then finally you have to have 3 credits for groups 1, 2, and 3 courses, and usually this is defined within your course selection. So like, for example, like one group might be like, it has to be like a science course, and then group 2 might be an arts course. So it will definitely depend on what your school has available. And so, yes, that is definitely something you have to look into. That's all for mandatory courses.
So I will now talk about the elective courses. And an elective is a course that a student takes by choice. And these are just some of the many elective courses that your students could take. These include some artsy stuff like art and music, fashion, to maybe writing, maybe computer science if they're interested in that. Depending on the high school, not every high school will have every course available. However, some of the more common ones like music and art, business will often be available at most high schools. I'm actually going to go back a slide for a sec. And as Laura mentioned, these purple sections are for mandatory courses, but all these empty white ones are for electives, and your child gets to choose what they want to take. They can, of course, take some fun courses that they're interested in, but especially as they get into the upper levels, some of the core subjects, such as science, will actually split their content into many different courses. And instead of taking one science course like you would in grade 9 or 10, you can take up to 4 or 5. So for example, in grade 11 and 12, science will be split into 3 other courses. Biology, chemistry, and physics are more of the common ones. People who are interested in environmental science can take that, and also social sciences as well. That includes psychology, anthropology, and sociology. And some schools may combine those 3 into just one course. So in grade 9 and 10, if your child is interested in science, they just take 1, but then in grade 11 and 12, they can take 5 or even more. Now, every course will have a course code, and many grade 11 and 12 courses will contain a U, M, or C in its course code. So for example, the course code for grade 12 biology is SBI 4U, but it could be 4M or 4C. U stands for university preparation, M stands for mixed, so university or college, and then C stands for college. So if your child were to take most of their courses in university, then that means they can apply for university or college. However, if they take their courses in C for college, they cannot apply for university. If they take M, they can apply for university or college. Same thing with U, university or college. Now, I don't feel comfortable using the words easier and harder per se, but generally speaking, university courses are harder or more technical than college courses. Another course code is E, which stands for workplace. You notice this more in, for example, more trade-related courses. And then O is another course code, which stands for open. And you'll notice these in more general artsy courses, such as fashion or art. This is just an example using English as a progress chart. So what your child takes in grades 9 and 10 is going to impact whether they can take upper level courses in their upper levels of study. So for example, if your child in grade 9 takes academic English and then grade 10 takes academic English, that means they can apply for grade 11 university preparation English and then grade 12 university preparation English. And then that means they can apply for university. But if they start in grade 9, they take applied. In grade 10, they'll do applied again. In grade 11, they can only take college, and in grade 12, college, and they can only apply for college with that. So what you take in grade 9 and 10 will impact your child's ability to select certain courses for grades 9 for 11 and 12, and then that's going to impact whether they're allowed to apply for university or college. Something that Ontario offers is specializations called SHSM, which stands for Specialist High Skills Major. And according to its website, this program provides industry mentorship through specific courses, industry standard certifications, and real-world experiences. This is just a list of some of the programs that are offered in SHSM. And what this program does is that students apply in grades 9 and 10 for grade 11 and 12. And during grade 11 and 12, they'll take very focused courses within these categories, and they can meet with mentors, they can do internships and co-op opportunities and actually get some hands-on experience prior to high school graduation, which is very cool. For example, if your child is interested in information and communications technology, you can check out what that entails. And you'll see that in London and the surrounding area, there are 3 high schools that offer this specialization, because not every high school will offer all the specializations. In London, though, HBBO Secondary School in Westminster will offer information and communications technology as part of its SHSM program. Woodstock also offers it as well. And when students graduate from an SHSM program, they'll have a beautiful red seal on their high school diploma, such as the one pictured here. I'm not sure if it necessarily helps them get into universities or colleges. However, that seal is an example and a symbol that your students have experienced some real life experiences prior to graduation. And that's a really, really great opportunity to have.
Alrighty, so now that your student has picked their courses, we need to talk about what it's like to actually go to school. So first of all, we need to kind of talk about the dress code that is required. So note that we're only going to go over the dress code for public schools, as private schools and Catholic schools might have like a uniform and their dress code will be entirely different. But every school board seems to have its own dress codes in place. In London, the school board is TVDSB, which stands for Thames Valley District School Board. And however, all schools have the same goal of wanting their students to express themselves while also promoting a safe, positive, and inclusive school environment. So here's the dress code for TVDSB. So some don'ts. Headwear that fully obscures a student's face is not permitted except as an accommodation under the Human Rights Code. Students may not dress in other people's cultures. For example, usually this would happen during Halloween. Students are also not allowed to have any inappropriate imagery on their clothing. This includes anything that can be construed to symbolize, suggest, display, promote, or incite recreational drug or alcohol use, illegal or criminal activity, profanity, pornography, violence, the promotion of racial or other identity-based hatred, or anything that just threatens the health and safety of the students. Students are also required to have a top and bottom layer made from opaque, not see-through or transparent material. And the bottom layer of clothing is required to cover the groin and buttocks, and the top layers will cover the nipples. So also undergarment, in terms of what is allowed though, undergarments worn as the only layer of clothing and swimwear worn other than required an activity with this. Students actually are required may wear clothing that exposes straps and waistbands of undergarments. Surprisingly, I was quite surprised in that note. In terms of, there is also class-specific clothing and safety wear. So some courses like, say, woodshop or chemistry might require some PPE, which is personal protective equipment. Like, for example, like gloves or steel-toe boots, depending on what it is. And then finally, they must wear shoes. But yes. Okay. So we also need to talk about transportation, because how is your student going to get to the school? Well, in London, students in the Thames Valley District School Board must live 3.2 or more kilometers away to be eligible for bus transportation. I actually have a website screenshot on the next slide. It's called mybigyellowbus.ca, in which you can input your street number and street name, your school board and municipality, in order to see whether they can provide the transportation through bus for you. In some places like Toronto, students in grades 9 to 12 are eligible to receive TTC tickets, which are the Toronto Transit Commission, which is the above ground public transit bus system. But if your student is ineligible to take the bus, the other options are, taking a taxi or other forms of public transportation. Like if walking is close enough, driving a personal vehicle, carpooling, or getting driven by your parent, of course. Alrighty. So now we need to talk about kind of like the fun things that you can do on your off hours and like, lunch period or after school, before school, which is the recreational activities. And I would say that recreation kind of falls under three main categories, which is sports, music, and then kind of like all your other miscellaneous clubs and things. So in terms of sports, we need to ask ourselves what sports are available. Unfortunately, all high schools will be different in terms of what they offer. There's going to be a lot of overlap, I would say, especially if the sport is played externally at other schools and you're in competition with other schools. But where do you find out about which sports are offered? Well, at the beginning of each of the school years, there is a clubs week in which representatives from these teams or clubs will talk to students who might be interested and provide information. There also might be posters, announcements, but I would say the best way to find out about a specific sport is to ask the people who work in the gym, your gym instructor, or any other member of faculty, because like some of your teachers might actually be supervising these sports as they go on, or even like coaches. So is there a tryout process for these sports? Well, I would say that from my experience, there are like recreation / in-house sports that are happening that are more like drop-in, casual. And so those you would not have to apply to or try out for. And then there's also the sports that you will be in competition with other schools. And so in that regard, they would want a bit more experienced players. And so they would probably have a tryout process in place for that. So where do you play? Well, usually, again, it depends. If it is just internal, then it definitely just play in your own gym, or even if they're like your school field, if it's an outdoor activities. I know at Central we played in Carruthers Field, which was about like a 10-minute walk. But like if you're gonna play with other schools, you might have to leave school early in order to commute to another school to play in a competition. But yes. All right, so the next category we'll go over is music. So what is available for music? Unfortunately, again, it really depends. I know Beale itself is an art school. They probably have a lot more to offer than Central had. But how do you find out about what is available? Well, again, Clubs Week, but also asking, in this case, like your local music teacher in the school, like the music teacher in the school. And is there a trial process? I would say there isn't normally. So most people in these groups are there because it is a requirement for their course. For example, as I mentioned in terms of the co-requisite. So I took music and I had to be part of the orchestra. So in that regard, like there would not be a tryout process. However, there's also more specialized groups, for example, jazz band or the string quartet, which you would have to apply for because it is a limited number of people. And then where do you play? Well, you practice in your school, usually early in the mornings or right after school, from my experience. And you play at concerts and participate in the Kiwanis Music Festival, where multiple other schools will also compete.
And next up, I'll talk about clubs, which I think is such a fun and exciting part of high school because this is really a chance for you to learn something new, meet new friends, and gain some valuable experiences and potentially leadership skills as well. So in terms of the clubs that are available, just like Laura said, for sports and music, it's very much going to vary school to school. However, some common clubs that you'll often see that pretty much every school has are things like chess club or anime club, stuff like that. Some of the experiences that your child may have, they'll definitely meet new friends, gain some new skills, and depending on whether the club needs a president or somebody to do their kind of communications, they can learn some skills from that as well. And even better, if your child is interested in something and very passionate, but the school does not have a club for that yet, your child can start a club of their own, and that's going to look great on a resume and give them some top experiences as well. Now, just for a little throwback, I actually have my grade 12 yearbook right here, and I'm just going to flip it over to the club section to kind of see what clubs were available back then. So here we see that there was a math club, and I remember the math club going to competitions, the chess club, there was a multicultural club, and some multicultural clubs will put on performances that involve dance and singing. There was a club for those of the Christian faith. There was a wellness club as well, also an anime club. And in terms of sports, there was volleyball, golf, hockey, rugby, track and field, swimming, soccer, skiing, badminton, basketball, cross country, football, and baseball. So lots and lots and lots of things for your child to do, and a great way for them to burst out their bubble and experience something new.
Alrighty, so next we need to talk about resources and support. And your number one resource in high school will definitely be the guidance counselors. So when you're in school, your child will be assigned to a specific guidance counselor, usually goes by last name. What they do is they usually work with students, faculty, and parents to identify opportunities for growth, address issues, and other academic guidance. To give some examples for this, I feel like we can break down the roles of guidance counselors into three main categories, which is scheduling, future, and concerns. So guidance counselors can help to change your class schedule, drop or add courses as needed. I remember like at the beginning of every year, you have this giant line up for the guidance counselor's office in the first few weeks as people want to drop and change their schedules around. The next category would be educational planning in the future. So they'll ask you, for example, like what you're planning to do after graduation and point you in the direction for success. They will like remind you of your OSSD diploma requirements, your perhaps college and university information workshops to help you apply for scholarships, bursaries, and OSAP. They might provide some tips on your study skills, help you register for night school, summer school, or a virtual academy. They also might give you information on post-secondary options or SATs if you're planning on applying to post-secondary in the States. They would also give information on school to work opportunities and possibly tutors if need be. In terms of personal concerns, they might make referrals to support staff and outside agencies. I know that at Central, I think there was a school psychologist that I was referred to at one point, but also I know that they would also refer you to more external resources as well. They will also address any other concerns like low grades, bullying, or suspension.
And now I want to dive into some difficult topics. And I was actually debating what to title this section other than difficult topics, but I really felt like this was the most suitable name because some of the topics I'll talk about is very difficult to deal with as a teen going through high school, but also as parents, if your child does go through some of these things. And these include sex ed, social media, bullying, and drug use. So to begin with sex ed, which stands for sexuality education, it begins as early as grade 6. And in sex ed classes, students will learn about, for example, different male and female reproductive system and parts. They'll learn how to label them. They'll learn about safe sex, consent, STIs, forms of contraceptives, etc. Now, technically, parents can opt out of sex ed for their child, which means, parents say, I don't want my kids to learn about this. But from my personal experience, pretty much everybody in the class will learn about this. And sex ed is often taught neutrally. So there's no encouragement to have sex, but there's also no discouragement. In fact, for me, the main lesson that I learned from early on sex ed is you have sex when you feel ready, and whenever that may be is going to be different for every student. According to the National Institutes of Health, 20% of teens ages 12 to 14, 40% of teens ages 15 to 16, and 66% of teens aged 17 to 18 have had some sort of sexual experience. And those numbers may be very shocking, but that's why I'm putting it on the slide for parents to be aware. Some secondary schools will also provide students with, for example, free condoms. And again, because sex ed is taught very neutrally with no encouragement or discouragement, that's not the school necessarily saying, you should have sex. They're more saying, if you choose to have sex, at least have safe sex, and condoms are a part of that. Next up, I want to talk about social media, and we're going to look at some stats. So around 90% of 13 to 17-year-olds use at least one form of social media. That could be Instagram or Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter, or now it's called X, for instance. However, 67% of teens actually use TikTok, which makes it the most popular social media platform among youth after YouTube. On average, the average person spends around 1 hour and 40 minutes a day using social media, and the average age for starting to use social media is 12.6, so before the age of 13, which is quite young. And around 41% of youth have had bad experiences on social media, and that could be bullying, for example. Now, if you're wondering why this slide looks very different than the rest of our slides, it's because this slide was actually taken from another presentation that I did for the RAI back in February on youth and social media and how to keep your kids and teens safe online as they navigate through social media. And I encourage you to check it out if this interests you. Next up, I want to talk about drug use. According to a 2018 study, 21.5% of youth between grades 7 to 12 have tried marijuana or weed, and around 7.6% have tried some form of a hard drug, and that could be cocaine, meth, or heroin, for example. Now, students are taught about drug use in upper elementary school, so grades 7 to 8. And unlike sex ed, drug use is often taught in a biased manner. And the main message is don't do drugs. And even though students are taught how to handle peer pressure for drug use in these sessions, unfortunately, peer pressure will exist. And that includes in a secondary school system as well. Your children may experience some form of peer pressure to experiment and try drugs, and that could be dangerous if they become addicted and hang out with the wrong crowd. So I thought it was important to mention. And finally, I want to talk about bullying. According to the Pacer Center, around 1 in 5 teens have reported being bullied. And in recent years, online bullying has gone up, likely due to the use of social media. And this could include forms of bullying such as blackmailing, posting humiliating content, or spreading rumors online. If your child is bullied, like Laura said, report it to their guidance counselor, who may talk to their principal about that. If needed be, the police will be involved in the investigation process. Bullies can face some very serious consequences for their actions, such as being suspended or even expelled from the school. However, it's ultimately the victim who is impacted the most. If needed be, the child who is bullied could switch schools or be homeschooled. In extreme circumstances. For our next portion, I'm going to talk about some major assessments, specifically the EQAO and OSSLT. So in grades 3 and 6 in elementary school, students will take an EQAO test on math and English. In grade 9, first year of high school, students will take an EQAO test in just math, and then in grade 10, they'll take another test in English. But it's not an EQAO, it's the OSSLT. The OSSLT stands for the Ontario Secondary School Literacy Test, and students must pass in order to graduate high school, whereas EQAO is just a standardized test to kind of see where students are at. EQAO stands for Education Quality and Accountability Office, and it's an annual standardized test for literacy and math for grades 3 and 6, and just math again for grade 9. And it's intended to measure a student's ability to understand what they read, use proper writing in terms of grammar, spelling, and punctuation, and understand how to do math problems. ESL students, so new English learner students, may be exempt from taking the test, and these do not count towards a student mark, and it's not going to affect their progress in school. Again, just a way for the government to kind of gauge where everybody's at. www.eqao.com. You can find some EQAO practice tests for your kids to do, and this is just a sample question for a grade 9 EQAO math test. The OSSLT stands for the Ontario Secondary School Literacy Test, and unlike EQAO, students must pass this test in order to graduate high school, scoring at least 300 out of 400 possible points. If a student fails the test in grade 10, they can retake it in grade 11. If they fail in grade 11, they can retake in grade 12. And if they fail again in grade 12, they can take the Ontario Secondary School Literacy course, and they must pass the course in order to graduate. Now, depending on your child's English proficiency at the time of the test, they may have a couple of different options for that. So for example, they may have the option to just do the test in grade 11 instead of grade 10. I myself, as an ESL student, actually had this option. I remember being in grade 10 and being called down to my guidance counselor's office, and they told me that since I'm an ESL student, if I didn't feel comfortable, I didn't have to take it in grade 10. I could just skip ahead to grade 11 and do it next year. I wanted to take the challenge though, so I said I'll do it this year, and thankfully I passed. But skipping it to grade 11, postponing it to grade 11 is an option. Students may also be given some extra time to complete the test. I know as ESL students, we had the full day to do the test, unlike most students who had just half a day. Here is the link. It is a big link to the OSSLT practice test. And here's a sample question. So your students may read a paragraph, answer some questions, and then do a little writing exercise. My first ever session with the RAI is actually on supporting your children's English language learning. And it kind of ties into this, so that's why I've put it up on the slide, and I encourage you to check it out if this is something that you're interested in.
Alrighty, so next we'll go over requirements for graduation. Besides the mandatory courses and our major assessments, you have to also complete at least 40 hours of volunteering. So you will receive a form of which your supervisor will fill out. Once the form is complete, and you submit it to your school, in which they can put it on their records. So there are numerous places to find volunteer opportunities in London, Ontario specifically. So that's where we grew up. There is a Pillar nonprofit website. Also, there are festivals that occur in Victoria Park that always need volunteers. I actually heard of I had a friend who actually completed 1,000 hours this way. This was quite impressive. I only completed my 40 hours. And so like in that regard, you also need to think about, and this is a good opportunity for relevant work experience, or like experience that you might need to put on for your applications for post-secondary, for example. So another way to find out about the opportunities is, think about the companies you want to work with. And then, or like just the kind of experience. So if you want to work with like dogs, maybe like look at an animal shelter, for example. Stuff like that. So if you usually go to a company's website and scroll all the way down, there's like that quick links portion in which there's usually a link that says like volunteer with us, or careers, or join the team. And if they don't have this button, why not just send them an email and ask if they accept volunteers? If you know what field you want to go into, this is a great way to get some relevant experience. So like ask yourself, what would I enjoy doing? For me, as a creative artistic person, I was like, I actually volunteered with Museum London, in which I basically spent 2 hours a week doing art, which was probably the easiest volunteer experience I I personally ever have done. But yes, so after this, I think it is yes. Alrighty. So prepping for post-secondary. So all different programs in post-secondary is going to require different things. All programs, though, are going to require at least grade 12 English. I think that's pretty universal, I would say. But depending on what kind of course you want to go into or program, then it will require different things. For example, as an art student, I had to submit an art portfolio. I know for music, you might have to do an audition. And then if you want to go and say like science or more specific things, like you definitely have to take some science courses if you want to be specifically go into biology. Obviously, take all the biology courses that you can in high school, so stuff like that. So some other things that you might need, letters of recommendation, which you could get from anyone that's basically not your family. But that's a good opportunity to get, let's say, your supervisor for volunteer opportunities, perhaps some teachers, your guidance counselor, sending any connections that you make during your time in high school. So also, you also might need a letter of intent or interest, personal statement or essay, a resume, perhaps even an English proficiency test. Academic transcripts for sure. Like I know that there is a entrance scholarship, and so if you have your grades to a certain amount, then you might be eligible for that scholarship. Also financial information. Again, when it comes to bursaries and scholarships, they might need to know whether you are in financial need in order for you to qualify for these kind of scholarships. And then sometimes even proof of citizenship. So yeah, just make sure to check well in advance to make sure you're taking the required courses needed to apply. As Kelly is going to talk about, there is possibilities of early acceptance. And so you might need to decide kind of maybe a general direction you want to go in early on in order to take the correct courses and be in the right path for that. But like there's no there's you can definitely change. Just know that that you might have to retake some courses. For example, in grade 12, you might completely do a 180, and then you realize you have to take like a grade 9 course, and there's no problem with that. Just like know that that there's just different things that are required for different paths. Okay, in terms of like where specifically you can go to apply, in terms of colleges, the website is Ontario Colleges, and then for university is OUAC, which stands for Ontario University's Application Center. Yes.
Now, in terms of the grade 12 credits that will count towards applying for university, no matter the program, universities and colleges will always look at the grade 12 English credit. And oftentimes they'll look at your top 6. And if English is up there, then English will count. If English is not part of your child's top 6, they'll look at English and then their top 5. Universities usually have more strict application requirements than colleges. So for example, higher averages or more specific courses in order to take a program. If needed be, students can always take a victory lap, so that's a grade 13, and during this time, they can complete more courses required for a program that they want to apply into, or just retake some courses and get a better grade. Programs that are more technical will often have more specific courses required in order to apply. And I'm using 2 examples here for a media major and an engineering major. The media major is me. So these are actually the courses that I took back in grade 12. I took English, 3 media, writing, music, vocals, and French. And with media, it being kind of a general course, all it required is an English grade 12 credit and then your other top 5. So for me, that was English, my 3 media, writing, and music. Those 6 counted as my overall average, and I applied with those. If you are more looking into a more technical program, for instance, such as the University of Waterloo's engineering program, they're going to have a lot more requirements. They actually have 5 mandatory courses. So they're going to look at your child's English, calculus, functions, physics, and chemistry grade. And then there are 3 electives. They'll look at the top mark for them. So depending on what you want to take in university or college, what you take in grade 12 will definitely matter, and the mark will matter as well. In terms of hearing back from the universities after your child applies, there are usually 3 rounds of acceptances: early, regular, and late. Early acceptance is based on grade 11 grades, and depending on the university, you could receive these as early as the fall of grade 12. However, the thing with early acceptance is that if you do receive an early acceptance, but the grade 12 grades drop, universities can revoke it. They can take it back. Regular acceptance is when most students will receive their university or college acceptances, and these are based on earlier on grade 12 grades. You can receive them anytime from April, May, June. I myself got regular acceptance in early May. And depending on the school, you may also receive a late acceptance, and these are based on grade 12 grades. The reason for late acceptances could be, for instance, if your child applies, but their average barely hits the threshold. For example, if the program requires a 70 average, but your child has a 71, or if your child applies into a very competitive program and there is a long line of students waiting, maybe after a few students who got in drop out, then more students on the wait list will be taken off the wait list and then given acceptances. High school is such an exciting time for your child, and I'm sure a very nerve-wracking time for parents. However, these 4 years are going to fly by. Your kids are going to make so many great memories and new friends, and they'll be young adults by the end of it. Laura and I hope that you've enjoyed our session, that it's been informative. Thank you so much for listening, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Kaylee and Laura, for this informative presentation. It covers a lot of important aspects, and by all means, for everyone who's watching us on social media platforms, if there is any questions, please feel free to type them into the chat. Meanwhile, thank you so much, ladies. However, I do have a question. What if the student was not successful in obtaining the credit that's required to pass for the next step? They should just redo that credit, or they will have to redo the whole year or semester or level?
Yeah, thank you, Haitham, for the great question. These situations definitely happen. And first things first, I think it's important for parents to keep in mind that if your child is struggling, that there are resources at school. It does not make them a bad student by any means. We all need a little bit of help every now and then. But to answer your question, if a child were to fail one course, for instance, they can possibly retake that course in summer school ahead of time. So for example, grade 10 history is mandatory, but if they fail grade 10 history in grade 10, they can take grade 10 history again in summer school. Hopefully they'll pass, and then in grade 11, they can just move on. If they fail more than one course, there are several resources that are available to help. One option is that they can, if they fail a semester one course, they can retake it in semester two. But if they fall too behind, what the school may suggest is an alternative program for them to use. Or they may suggest, for example, the student just ultimately taking an extra year. So for example, if they can take a lot of grade 10 courses in grade 11 courses in grade 12, they take a victory lab where they complete their grade 12 courses, and then they can move on. But bottom line is there are different options available, and it's certainly never the end of the world should a student struggle with courses.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And finally, I would like to ask you if you could please give a comment to the parents who are watching or who will be listening to us. As you know, this will be interpreted into several languages, and it will be pre-streams through our social media. Would you give comment or advice to the parents about being open with their kids, especially when you are mentioned some sensitive topics that might be very could be considered as a taboo in some cultures? And I am a newcomer. I know that you are a newcomer. You've immigrated, so we have different cultures. So is there anything you could say to the parents about being open to their kids?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Haitham. That is absolutely an excellent one. And that section for me was kind of difficult to make because my family were newcomers. I came to Canada when I was 7 in grade 2. And, these topics such as sex ed and drug use, and they're very taboo in some cultures, to the point where parents may kind of turn a blind eye and think that, I raised my kids well, they're not going to do stuff like that. However, I think it's important to parents to A, recognize that, and B, recognize that anybody could fall victim to anything. In terms of being open with your children, I think that parents should take the role of caution as a cautionary situation when explaining it to their kids. Just explaining to them that these are topics that they may see on social media or hear about from their peers or even learn about at school. And maybe it's not normal in our home country, in our culture, but we're in Canada now, and this is just part of the curriculum. It's not going to be an easy topic, but I think that prepares both the parent and student for what is about to come. And I think that I'm hopeful that schools will offer resources to newcomer parents as well, who may be struggling to really communicate with their child about some of these topics. But I think recognizing them and recognizing the importance of having a conversation is always a great first step.
Thank you so much, Katie and Laura. So to wrap up this, I would like just to express my great thanks to both of you ladies for this kind and nice effort. Thank you so much. And it's an honor always to have you with RRAI.
Thank you so much, Haitham.
Thank you so
Yes,
much.
thank
And
you.
for everyone, stay safe, stay well. Happy holidays, and we are looking forward to see you with another sessions for Rights and Responsibilities Awareness Initiative. Thank you, everyone.